everybody, I'm Sarah with athriftymom.com. You guys are used to me bringing you good deals, fun reviews, being goofy, sitting on a squatty potty, all sorts of weird stuff. And I normally never do videos on Sunday. Normally that's always reserved for like my family day and church day. But since I've shared a couple personal posts this week, and I've had lots of different questions about my son and his heart defect and his special needs and stuff like that. Hey, Ashley. I decided that I would actually open it up to kind of like a question and answer because I thought maybe that would be more helpful. And so here we go. So if you guys have any questions, please ask. Otherwise, I'll just kind of tell a little bit about his story. And then hopefully this will help some of you. So when my son was born, we had no idea anything was wrong. Had him normal delivery, everything like that. And then shortly after he was born, his pediatrician happened to notice that he wasn't oxygenating quite, I don't know, the way he should. And so he kept him in the nursery just for a little while, and then he never came back. And luckily, I'm laying here wide awake waiting for a 3 a.m. so I can go on my road trip. Well, hopefully this will be entertaining. Through a series of events and an echocardiogram, we found out that my son actually has hypoplastic left heart syndrome, which means he's literally missing the whole left side of his heart. It's hard to deal with sometimes. Is it hard to deal with sometimes? It is. And I'll get to that in a second. I love your vulnerability and your willingness to be so transparent. Thank you, Leslie. So, I'd never heard of a kid living with half a heart. I mean, I didn't even know it was like a possibility. They told me it was hypoplastic left heart. Never even heard of those words. I couldn't say those words. They gave us our options, and our whole life changed from there. So is it hard living with a child with, so here's the thing. So Matthew we ended up going ahead and picking for him to have surgery. And basically what that meant is his very first surgery, they would actually put him in a hypothermic freeze and stop his heart and try to do the repairs needed and then bring him back from the freeze and try to, hopefully he would come back. And we had a lot of complications, and over the next 3 years we lived in and out of the hospital, and we were in Seattle and Phoenix and Utah, and he was a very, very, very sick little boy. Now, a lot of kids that have this actually come out of it just fine with no from one heart mama to another. Oh, thank you, Marcia. A lot of kids come out of it with no really side effects. Matthew, on the other hand, because he has had so many complications and he has been literally shocked back to life in front of us several times, and then he started having seizures when he was 3 years old, he has incurred a lot of delays because of those. Because when you're deprived of oxygen that much, and when you are unable to oxygenate yourself the way you should, and you're in seizures sometimes for hours at a time. Juliana says, a special education teacher's getting my master's. I'm very interested in hearing your story. Thank you. So Matthew has learning delays. So Matthew just turned 15. He is the size of about a typical 7-year-old. And for in like math and spatial reasoning skills, he grades at about first grade curriculum, and for reading he actually is finally up to a 3rd grade curriculum. So he's in 8th grade. He could have been in 9th grade, but he's in 8th grade right now, and he spends all day in a special needs class where the curriculum is lower to be able to, help him and his abilities. And so he's delayed that way. And then, so he's tiny, and so most people, when they meet him, they don't realize he's my oldest. They think he's one of my middle kids. And then most people don't realize that he's delayed because he's just little. And so he kind of acts like a typical 6 or 7-year-old. But anybody that meets him normally falls in love with him because he's like super happy. He's just like, one thing that I love about Matthew is, so we put him in a special needs program this summer for, he's done it for 2 years for baseball. And because he loves sports and he doesn't hesitate to jump into any situation. So a lot of these kids are like becoming quite large. I mean, he's tiny compared to most of the kids in his grade. And he wants to jump right in and play football and soccer and everything with him. And he's tiny, and so it scares me as a mom. And so I'll tell him, anyway, so we put him on a special needs baseball team. And when we showed up, there was kids of all developmental levels. I mean, so several of the kids on his team, or the opposite team, were like nonverbal, in wheelchairs, being pushed through the game, or some of them, it literally took them like 5 to 10 minutes to hit the ball. And I thought, was he one in the red suit for Halloween? He was. Yes, he was the one in the red suit for Halloween. And so when we took him to his first baseball game, I thought he was going to be like, Mom, why on earth did you put me on this team? These kids can't even run. Like, and some of them can't even hit the ball. Why would you put me on this team? And after the game, he came over, and my husband or I were kind of like a little nervous, thinking, what are you going to, what's he going to say? What's he going to do? And he was like, that was the best game ever. He's like, we did awesome, and the other team was so tough, and I have great people on my team. And he was like so positive. And I mean, I've learned a lot over the years of being his mom, and he's always kind of surprising me. And not all of those surprises are good, but this is one of the good surprises. Is from that day, it finally clicked to me that Matthew does not see people for anything other than people. And that is one gift that if everybody could have that gift, what an amazing world that we would live in. But so the fact that Matthew is playing with kids that were Down syndrome, kids that were autistic, kids that were in a wheelchair, couldn't walk, he saw them all just for people. And he was so happy to have them on his team, and he just loved them for them. Matthew doesn't hesitate to jump into a group of adults, a group of girls. Like, he just loves everybody, and he just loves people. And it kind of finally clicked that day that that's why Matthew's fine wherever he's at, because he just loves everybody. Thank you, guys. So is it hard? That was back to one of the questions. I think the hardest part for me, when I was first starting out, I was terrified to find out that my child was going to be different, because I didn't know what that meant. And I couldn't wrap my brain around anything other than the storybook life that I had kind of planned out for myself. And the fact that it meant I was literally going to be in and out of hospitals for 3 years, and I didn't know if my son was even going to make it. And he was tube fed for 4 years. He's still on like 5 medications a day. The first several years we were like going to the doctor twice a week just to try to make sure he was gonna live through the weekend. And I didn't know how to do that. I really didn't. And I was terrified. I was scared. And it really was me seeing other families that had been through it, and seeing their children, and seeing that they were able to live just normal lives kind of after they got through this whole process, that kind of really gave me the strength and the hope to keep pushing forward. And I also had to learn that I couldn't try to plan my whole life out, which I was one of these people that I wanted to have everything planned, and I literally just had to focus on that day. And I had to focus on, and when tomorrow came, we would deal with tomorrow. And so that was a huge thing, is just taking it one day at a time. I know people say that all the time, but until you're actually in that situation, it's something you really have to learn. Was it genetic? And him being your first, are you concerned about his siblings? Yes. So we actually have had him genetic tested. In fact, ironically, we just finished some of that this week. When they first asked us when he was little if we wanted him to be genetic tested, we weren't interested in that because it wasn't going to change the outcome of how we felt about him or loved him or anything like that. So hypoplastic left heart right now is not necessarily genetic that they can find. I do find it strange, though, that almost every heart parent that I've talked to, if you look back on their family history, and this is just me, that most of them have somewhere in their family history where there was a blue baby or a child that died shortly after birth. And so in my brain, I think that there's got to be some type of genetic linking to it. In my family history, there's several babies that died shortly after birth. They didn't know why. But as of right now, no, they don't really necessarily have a reason. They told us it was a fluke and pretty much just bad luck. But so was I concerned about his siblings? Yes. When you grow a baby that comes out looking perfectly fine and you find out it only has half a heart, you kind of feel like a failure as a mom because you grew that. You grew that little beautiful human baby boy and he was totally broken. His heart didn't grow. And so I beat myself up for a long time, which ironically, I'm one of the most, I'm not organic, but like I don't take any medicine when I'm pregnant. I did have some pretty major dental stuff done. So part of me always wonders if maybe that had something to play in it. But through my other pregnancies, you couldn't even get me to take a Tylenol. Like, I wanted to give my babies every chance in the world at growing healthy. You are far from a failure, an amazing woman. Thank you. I know, but that's what I felt like. I felt like, oh my goodness, how did I grow a baby that wasn't, I felt like it was my fault. It wasn't, but that's what I felt like. So I did wait 4 years to have my next kid, my next daughter, and then, which I was really scared, but they told me I only had like an 8% chance. Anybody has an 8% chance of having a child with a heart defect. Actually, heart defects are the most common defect, birth defect, if you didn't know that. Stay strong from one heart mama to another. My son was diagnosed with, I know how to say that, I just can't treat, okay. I can't say that word, but I know what it is. An open heart surgery when he was 2 weeks old, and another heart surgery one last year, and had another procedure this May. An overwhelming, but us mommies need to stay strong. Yes. Okay, so my daughter, when I was pregnant with her, we did a fetal echocardiogram to make sure that she was okay, and actually she was not okay, which that, I already had one kid with half a heart, and he had echocardiograms almost every week for like the first 2 years of his life. And so I knew what an echocardiogram was. I knew how long it should take. I knew the standard routine. And it was actually Phil who had done almost all of Matthew's echocardiograms, and he was doing one on me. But you do it through the stomach and then look at the baby inside of you's heart. And I could tell that something wasn't right because I'd been around this guy a lot over the last, first 2 years, but I was 4 years later here. And, of course, he couldn't really tell me anything, but he just kept going over the same spots over and over. And I could just, he would ask me to move, and something that should have taken about 20 minutes, I was there for over an hour. And I knew that something was wrong. And so then his cardiologist came in, and she got to give me the lovely news that from what they could see on the pictures, my daughter's heart actually looked like it was more messed up than my son's. And that it looked like she was missing sections of her heart as well, and that a lot of the things weren't connected the way they were, and it was not a good situation. But they also said that they weren't able to get very clear pictures, and so she said, and this is one thing I loved about Dr. Walker, who was my cardiologist at the time, my son's cardiologist. She is very much a, Christian woman, and she said, I can't tell you this as a medical side, but I would like to encourage you to go home and ask your family to pray and, do those things that you would normally do and call upon the Lord and ask them to bless your baby. And then we're going to have you come back in 2 weeks and we're going to try to do this test again. But it didn't look good. And I was just sobbing. I mean, I was like, what? What do you mean? I already have one child with half a heart. You told me it wasn't going to happen again. I only had an 8% chance, but that was just having a defect, not having something worse. And to say I was heartbroken was I was beside myself. So we got together as a family and we decided to have a family fast. That's where we went without food for like 24 hours, and we basically just offered up prayers and to our Father in heaven, and we asked, for healing of this little baby. Yes, it was Karen. And so I went back in 2 weeks later, terrified, and got the test done again. And this time it took still longer than it should have, but it went faster. And she said, she says, one of those things, she's like, I don't know how to explain it, but the scans that we did 2 weeks ago don't look anything like the scans that we're doing today. Unfortunately, my daughter was stillborn. She was born with a rather large hole. She was actually stillborn with 2 holes in her heart. An atrial, I don't know, my husband knows the name of them. He's a nurse. I don't pay attention to those things. And so she was born with 2 pretty big holes in her heart, which that in and of itself was pretty traumatic. But I was like, she has all the parts. We're good. We have all the parts of her heart, so we're okay. And then miraculously we did have to have her tested quite a bit, but then over the course of the year, her body took over and healed, and no surgery was required for her. So, as if my son wasn't a miracle enough, she was another total miracle. And then my third daughter, I'm thinking, okay, she's got to be fine, right? I mean, what are my odds that... So since I then had like 2 kids with heart defects, then my percentage went up to, I think, to like 25%. But I'm like, okay, we're still good. So 3.5 years later, I got pregnant again. Long story short, she was actually born with a hole in her heart too. And so at that point I started thinking like, I need to stop creating humans because clearly I'm not good at it. But once again, her hole, she was born with a small heart hole in the bottom of her heart, and it closed as well. The good news is the last 2 babies, I have 5 kids, the last 2 were actually born totally fine. So 3 of my children do have 2 of them have heart defects. One of them has like the worst heart defect that you can be born with. But that was one of those things that I knew, to me, my family is the most important thing. And just because, some people have said some pretty harsh things like, well, you're stupid. Like, why would you have more babies if you knew that, clearly you're not growing healthy ones. But we're all doing good. We're fine. And to me, my kids are the most important thing in the world to me. And so I'm not one for selective, I can't think of the right word, but whole or not whole, I wanted my children. And so I wasn't about to change that just because they weren't perfect in the world's eyes. Sorry, not laughing to a 2-year-old pushing the buttons. That's all right. I like happy faces. If they were mad faces, I might be like, what? But no. Amen. So thankful for MDs and faith and parenting, strong testimonies. A happy Thanksgiving. Thank you. So ironically enough, my son's very first, so he was born November 18th. The next morning, he was born that night. The next morning, he was life flighted to St. Owl's, our children's unit over in Boise. And then we were only there for 2 hours. They were able to stabilize him just enough to get him on a life flight. And so him and my husband left on a life flight to go to Seattle Children's. And then I couldn't get a flight till the next day. This was actually right after 9/11, like I mean a month after 9/11. And I had never flown, and so flights were crazy. And trying to get flights was insane. And so my mom and I actually went on our very first flight ever. I had never flown. My mom had never flown. And then it was after 9/11 where everybody was getting screened. Everybody, like everything you packed had to be gone through. And I had to pack a breast pump because I was pumping milk, which obviously like they were like, breast pump looks like a bomb. So of course I had to go through all these extra screenings, which that was fun. And then my son came out so fast that he totally tore the ligaments off my tailbone, so I couldn't walk very good. I was a mess down there. And so I was like in a wheelchair, so it was quite, we were quite the pair. But hey, we made it to Seattle. We got there okay. It's easy to judge when you're not in the situation and think what you would do is perfect for the little bit I see of you. I think you're an awesome mom. Thank you. My dad has a congenital heart defect. My 2 oldest brothers were also born with heart defects. The second brother passed at 2 from complications from I can't believe I can't remember how to say that word. I've heard it a million times in my life. They aren't going to have more babies, and then my brother and I came along with no issues, right? I know. Carrie, aren't you glad that they finally decided to let you come? Seattle is amazing. I live here in Seattle and only took my 2 babies there when they were ill. Yeah. So we finally got to Seattle. My cousin Ryan, who lived there, came to pick me up from the airport, which little things like that were a huge blessing. Came to pick me up, got to Seattle Children's Hospital. They wheeled me in. They took me right up. I scrubbed in, and they took me to Matthew, who was already intubated and laying on the operating table, and they were all just waiting there for me to give him a kiss while he was still alive in case he didn't make it through surgery. He actually technically was not a candidate for heart surgery. He was too sick. And my husband said, you know what? We came all this way. We understand that he's not a candidate. We understand that he's probably going to die right here on this table. But he's going to die regardless without surgery. And so we had to sign some waivers and say that we understood that he was not a candidate. And yeah, so I got to kiss him and walk out. And it was Thanksgiving Day. And we just got to sit there and wait. I still cry when I hear a helicopter. Yep, I totally agree. When I see an ambulance, my heart kind of... So he went into surgery. They put him in a hypothermic freeze because that section, the Norwood that they have to do, they can't do while the heart's beating. And... or beating at its normal pace, I should say. And I'll be honest, and this is going to, some people are going to understand this and some people aren't going to understand this, and that's okay. I was so scared to be his mom, and I was so scared at what our journey meant ahead of us, and I loved him so much that I could not comprehend how to start loving him more and then lose him. And I could not comprehend or wrap my brain around how I was going to be his mom, how I was going to take him all over the U.S. to get surgeries, how we were going to afford to pay for it, how I was going to pay for food, how insurance was going to cover for it, how I was going to give him his medications, how I was going to learn everything I needed to. I was just totally traumatized. And so part of me in the back of my head kept thinking, if he's going to die, it's probably going to be best for him to go ahead and die right at the beginning, because I didn't want to put him through all of that only to have him suffer and then not even make it. And so in the back of my head, I kept thinking, if he doesn't make it through the surgery, it's okay. If he doesn't make it, it's okay, because that just means that, that's what it was meant to be. And so the surgeon came in. They bring us in to a little room, which when they want to meet with you in a little room, it's not good. And the surgeon came in. He still was operating and get up and everything. And he says, unfortunately, we've made the repairs that need to be done, but unfortunately, I cannot get your son off the heart and lung machine. I cannot get him off life support. He fails every time we try to take him off. And he's like, I'm going to go back in. I'm going to give him another 30 minutes. And if he can't get him off, then this is the end. And hearing that was absolutely devastating. Finally kind of hearing that, like, this was the end. And so we said, okay, go finish trying. And I got up, I walked to the bathroom, and I was in the bathroom stall, and I just lost it. And I just bawled my eyes out. And I didn't go in there. I just needed to be alone for a little bit. And so I went in there and I knelt down and, public restroom, knelt down by the toilet. And I started talking out loud. And, I just started talking to my Heavenly Father. And I started telling him that I was scared and telling him that I didn't know how to be his mom and that I didn't want him to hurt and I didn't want me to hurt. And that if that was the case, then I needed him to go ahead and go, and I understood that. But if he wasn't going to make it because of my inadequacies and because I didn't have enough faith to keep him whole and keep him alive, that right then at that point, I was going to accept my calling to be his mother. And I was going to accept the responsibilities. I didn't know how. I didn't know what that meant, but I wanted Heavenly Father to know that I loved him more than anything, and that I was ready to do that, and I was ready to put my faith in him and let anything that was going to happen, happen. I had the most warm, comforting, probably one of the most spiritual experiences I've ever had in my life, right there next to a toilet. And I knew that whatever happened at that point, that my Heavenly Father had heard my prayers, that he had acknowledged my prayers, and that I was, that he heard me. And my little guy was going to be okay. And so I walked out of that bathroom, walked into my husband, and of course everybody's bawling in the room, and I'm bawling, and we're trying to, and the nurse runs in. She's all in her scrubs and everything, and she's like, I just want to let you guys know. She's like, we had an update. She's like, your son is off the heart and lung machine. She's like, he is still critically ill, and he's too sick that we can't close his chest, which that meant he literally had his rib cage open and his heart just beating underneath, and they put like a Gore-Tex shield kind of over the top of it. But he was alive. And so, I don't know. You can call it coincidence, but I'm pretty sure that was kind of, I think he needed me to accept my calling to be his mom. And I needed to be okay with that and realize that sometimes you don't have control of everything, and you need to give it to the Lord and say, I'm willing to accept this. A plan and a purpose. Your testimony is amazing. Thank you. We walk by faith and not by sight. The halls of the hospital are hallowed grounds, and they are filled with so many prayers. Right. If you ever, are not happy with your life, or you, feel like you're picked on, or, I tell you what, go spend a couple hours in a children's hospital, and your whole perspective of life changes. My name is Karen. I remember crying myself to sleep when I was pregnant with my son. I was not a good enough person to raise him, my son, as a single mom, and my family tried to get me to abort him. I found myself the day he was born, right? So, one thing that you guys might find a little bit strange is the fact that I can talk about all this and I don't cry. And that is one thing that through all of this, I mean, I cried a lot. I cried a lot the first little bit. But because, so Matthew, he ended up having 15 different surgeries over over all those years. And we were a lot of times we were rushing him. In fact, we just live a mile from the hospital. We did live like 3 miles from the hospital, and we moved because we'd had so many like middle of the night runs to the hospital. I said, you have to move me closer, not further away, because when your son is dying in front of you, 3 miles is too far. So we are only a mile from the hospital, and we would get him there, and they would get those little pads and they would shock him and try to get his heart beating back to where it should be again. I learned that if you show emotion in those situations, you're not allowed to be in the room, because they need to be able to focus, and they can't have a mom in hysteria in the corner. And so I had to start learning to like totally suppress all of my emotions. And it was a really good thing, because it meant that, how old is he now? He's 15. He just turned 15 on Saturday. It meant that I was able to be with him and help in some pretty critical situations. But it also meant that for some reason I have kind of, I don't know, like I still feel all those, like even as I was telling you that story, inside I kind of feel like crying, but and getting me to cry they don't come to the surface like they should. I don't know if I maybe have a little bit of post-traumatic stress disorder, or I mean, I say that jokingly, but I'm serious, like, so maybe I need counseling, I don't know, but my ability to cry has kind of been lost in that whole process. But if that is kind of the worst thing that has happened, then, it was worth it. So I wasn't an overly emotional person before. And like I said, I did cry a lot at the very beginning. But then over all of the years and just kind of being exposed to it over and over and over, you just kind of have to learn to like put on that face. And so my husband cries more than I do now, so hey, but so scary, praying for you and your family. You're such a strong, inspiring woman. Thank you. Jen, bless your heart. So any other questions? What was the other, some of your questions I missed. Let's see. I understand completely. I felt very similar when my baby girl had congenital diaphragmatic hernia on my, oh my goodness, I used to hate going to that little room because it was so scared of what they were going to tell me, and my daughter was in ICU. I just not knowing if she was okay, alive or not, scariest feeling in the world. Yes, I know, I hate that room, I agree. Hardly anything ever comes good from that room, because if it's good news, they tell you in front of everybody. But if it's not good news, then they put you in that little room, and we saw too many patients, families go in that room, and their kids had passed away. They never came back out. I don't think that you have had time to catch up on your own feelings. You might have answers to this one, but how is he doing? He's doing well. He is still technically in heart failure, because he still only has half a heart, and it functions at less than capability of a normal heart, but it works for him. He is about the size of a 6 or 7 year old, and he functions at about a 6 or 7 year old level, even though he's 15. Now, that's not always typical of hypoplastic left heart kids. In fact, we know lots of hypoplastic left heart kids that you would never know anything's wrong, because they're the same size, same, they're at grade level. They kept telling us that, he'll catch up, but he just had such a rough first 3 years that he was just deprived of oxygen too many times, and then he started having seizures when he was 3, and so then that's kind of what caused a lot of his learning delays and other delays. Tricia says, I have a terminally ill son. I understand. I'm sorry, Trisha. Wish I could give you a big old hug. How do you handle his sensory issues? His sensory issues as a parent are still somewhat like, so he's good, he's healthy, but he still has a lot of, little quirks. So he has a hard time with noise. He has a hard time with, he has a hard time with smells. He was tube fed for 4 years. So if he ever gets something in his mouth that he doesn't like, he just, or if he smells something that he doesn't like, I smell something, he gags. And then he has a really hard time with me cutting his hair. Like, he can't really handle that, or he doesn't like it when stuff touches him certain ways, or he hates me brushing his hair. We're finally to the point where we can brush his teeth. Good, which that's, thank you, because that would, you have to sit on your kid and brush their teeth. So with sensory issues, I've had to learn that you just kind of have to, you want to just be like, knock it off, brush your hair. But you have to just kind of learn to act like that doesn't bother you, and act like those things are okay. Reacting to, yeah, I smell something. Reacting to the situation just kind of heightens things and makes things worse. And so his sensory issues as a parent are still frustrating. He has a really hard time, if he gets overstimulated, he doesn't know how to handle it. And so, if he's in a parking lot and he gets kind of confused or worried, he'll just crouch down on a little ball. And that's obviously not safe if you're in a parking lot. So things like that scare me. He doesn't like loud noises, but you just deal with it. And that's one thing, is that's just my Matthew. Everybody's kid's different. And Matthew's quirky and he has all these little weird things, but he's adorable and we love him. And you just deal with him. I have okay. Our son is a miracle. He was born healthy, but as he got older, he had 3 surgeries. When he's 7, he got the H1N1 influenza and developed asthma and PAC, premature articular contractions. So we take every day as a miracle, right? So yes, for Matthew, every day I go kiss him goodnight. I put my hand on his heart just to feel it. I shake him a little bit. That sounds awful, but just to kind of make sure he's still, if you're a heart mom, you get what I mean. Just kind of shuffle the blankets just a little bit just so I can see him move, and, pray for another day. And some days are pretty scary, and then other days are just really normal, which is awesome. Can he have a transplant in the future? Cleo, transplants only last 5 to 10 years. And so, yes, he will need a transplant at some point, but we hope that his little half a heart will get him as far as we possibly can before a transplant is needed. We're seeing a lot of the other kids that we've grown up with. In fact, one of the first heart kid I ever met, his name was Jack. And he always has just kind of done amazing. In fact, to the point where I was almost like, oh, why can't he be like Jack does? Jack does so good. And Jack is just moved to Texas, so he could be at a lower altitude to try to help him breathe. And probably in the next 6 months, he'll be a candidate for a transplant, which is heartbreaking. And so here's my little plug for transplants. When I was in the hospital with Matthew, we roomed with a lot of different kids, and several of those kids didn't make it. And some of those were because hearts didn't come available for them, or lungs didn't come available. And then some of those were drowning victims or other things like that. And there was one time I was in Arizona, and we roomed with a little 2-year-old who had fallen into his grandma's pool. Grandma was watching him, and he had snuck out into the pool, and they found him face down. And Unfortunately, he was brain dead. And so we shared a room. And so the only thing that divided me and that family was a little cloth curtain. And so I sat there and cried all night long, holding my baby, rocking him, kissing him, hugging him. And the mom on the other side of that little curtain, she rocked her baby all night long. She sang to him, and she loved him and kissed him, and they prayed, and they had everybody come. And I knew in the morning that she would have to say goodbye. And I sat there and I listened as the team came in and, asked her if organ donation was an option that she was maybe willing to think about. And I don't blame her. There's no judgment placed on her. But she was so heartbroken at the loss of her son that she didn't want anything else to happen to him. And she couldn't wrap her brain around them, harvesting his organs. And so she chose not to donate his organs. And so they took him off life support and cried and held him, and spent their time with him. And then once the family left the room, the nurse wrapped him in a blanket and carried him down the elevator. He just looked like a sleeping little boy, but the people in the elevator didn't even have an idea that he had passed, and walked him down to the morgue. And of course I'm watching this, bawling my eyes out. That was still at a point where I could cry, and hugging my baby and kissing him, and absolutely just heartbroken. But in the back of my mind, knowing that just 3 doors over, there was, not that he would necessarily be a match, but there was a little boy waiting for a heart, and there was a little girl across the hall waiting for a heart, and there was kids down, a couple rooms down, waiting for lungs. And so I guess this is what I'm getting to, is I want you to think about that. If your child was in that situation, would you want your child to be able to accept the gift, the amazing gift of transplant, and if it meant saving your life? And if you're willing to accept that gift, then take inventory of your thoughts and feelings and make that decision now, that if your child was in that position and you could give that gift to someone, make that now. Because asking a family to make that decision when they're heartbroken, shattered in a million pieces, is too much to handle. But if you can make that decision now, so like my family has known, actually since I was 10 years old, that if something was ever to happen to me, absolutely no questions asked, I want to donate my organs to save someone else. And so if you can make that decision now, when you're just happy living everyday life, and there's a good chance that's never ever going to become an option, make that decision now. And if your decision is to not donate your organs, that's fine. But at least it's not upon the heartbroken decision of someone else. So yeah, that answers the question. So someday he will need a transplant. And he will go on a list when he gets to the point where he's unable to really function by himself. And then we have to pray that a heart comes available. How do your other children deal with his special needs? Pretty good. They kind of come to a point. He's just their brother, and they don't really understand that he's special until kind of as they get older. My 11-year-old daughter has always acted kind of like the older sibling, even though she's 4 years younger. She's always helped dress him. She's helped care for him. She's helped feed him. She's just a big helper. And so she's actually twice the size of him now. And she's really good at, like, he'll get up and he'll snuggle in her lap. And she gets annoyed with him too, don't get me wrong. And my now 9-year-old daughter's pretty good. We try to have a very open discussion about it, but it makes them sad when we try to explain to them about his heart and what the future might bring. And so we have those discussions, but for the most part, they just love Matthew, their brother, for the quirky kid that he is, and they Just love him. And it's great having a brother who's special needs, because we get to be involved in a lot of special needs programs. And it means that my kids get to learn to not be scared of people who are different. And so, you know, when you go to your brother's practice and you got like 3 Down syndrome little boys that are come up and are giving you kisses and hugs, you just learn to love it. And they're not scared of that, which I'll be honest, when I was a kid, you know, somebody that had a little bit different special needs, I thought they were cute, but I didn't know how to handle it. So the fact that they are learning that is pretty special. We totally have to hold down our son to brush his teeth. Yep. He's getting good. He's getting better, but it's been an issue. You're an amazing mama. Thank you. You're welcome. He sounds like a beautiful child. You are such a refreshing soul to see on social media. You let off a positive vibe in every video, and such a nice change from everything that's going around social media. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. God bless you and yours. I've been in this room. It's a wretched place. Sensory kids make you so aware of the world and are walking around naked through the world. So aware that the world isn't walking around naked though in the world. I know, I tell you what, when you're like, please just put on your clothes. You can't go naked. It's like, yes. Do you have the headset that help you blocking the noise? I don't remember the name of it. Do you have the headset that helps block out the noise? No, I do not. Sometimes if we're gonna go somewhere that's like really loud and overstimulating, we give him like my husband's ear things that he wears shooting. So sometimes we'll put that on him. Check the box. Donors save lives. Yes. I remember being the children at Children's in Denver. They set up a cloth wall and perform open heart surgery as a nurse. As I nursed my son. Amazing what they can do. I tell you what, that cloth partition in hospitals has seen some pretty amazing things. Amen. I'm an organ donor. My family knows. Awesome. Such great advice. Please give the gift of love. I'm an organ donor. I'm an organ donor. I'm in an area and a heart mama too. Who's your cardiologist? We started out with Eloisa Walker. We were in Boise, and she was our cardiologist up till he was 13, and then 3 years ago we switched to Dr. Womack, just because we had some, and it's been a really good change. I have amazing things to say about both of them. So, but that's who Dr. Womack is, his cardiologist right now. My cousin gave the gift of life and saved, I believe, 5 people, and my auntie got to talk to the person a few years back and received his heart, and it's amazing for her. We celebrate his life every... Oh, no, I don't want to block you. I didn't read what you say. We celebrate we celebrate his life every year with the gift of walk, life, and run. That's awesome. My uncle has Down syndrome. Such big hearts, right? I know. If you have someone who has Down syndrome in your family or in your life, then you're just, you know, they just bring, I mean, they can be stinkers, but they also, Matthew's kind of like that. The fact that he just loves everybody, and the fact that you can just love anybody and have no judgment is honestly one of the best gifts you could ever have. Have you done toes? Have you done your toes? I'm not sure what you mean by that. I agree with Ryan. We see him too, love him. She is not there anymore. She's not there anymore. Bianca, did she, I heard that maybe she left. Tell me more. I'm curious, actually. I had to have 3 blood transfusions after my hysterectomy as a single mom. I'm so grateful for a blood donor as well. Yeah, when I had surgery, in fact, actually for 3 years, we did an event called Save Lives, Save Money, and we did a blood drive, and we ended up getting like, 100 plus units of blood or whatever, just understanding what that does and saving lives. And so that was really good. And then when I got pregnant, I had to kind of put that on hold because it was stressing me out so much. Oh yeah, he threw fits sometimes, but when he was good mood, he was great. Bianca, do you have a heart kid? I mean, and so I'm assuming, like, are you talking about Dr. Walker? So any other questions? Like I said, I don't normally do question and answers, and I definitely don't normally do them about personal things. I used to write personal stuff a lot more, but then I've been blogging for 9 years, and you know, when you're telling people about, like, you know, good deals and stuff like that, people get angry or grumpy, and it's a lot easier to just be like, ugh, not really pay attention. But when somebody's like mean and rude about what you wrote, like sharing your personal story, it's a little harder to just brush it off. And so I kind of quit writing about stuff for a while. They told my mom that she left because of medical reasons. My little cousin with Downs used to see her. Yeah, she got to the point where it was really hard to get the care we needed. And so that was kind of what decided to, and she wasn't doing very well, so that makes me sad. I hope she's okay. And so that was the point we decided to change, and we've been very, very, very happy with Dr. Womack, though. Walked, we leave. My cousin's daughter used to see her. Walker, yeah, did leave. Okay. I didn't know that. Like I said, we left, and it was hard because she had been my son's cardiologist for so long. But we were having just some issues, and so we decided to switch. Which, isn't that funny how, like, I feel like those are just tender mercies. Like, we switched when things were good, and I think it would have been a lot harder knowing that she had just stopped. So we switched, and we found somebody that was great, and wow, tender little mercy there. Our son has Down syndrome. He can be a stinker, and he has aggression problems, but I must say he's also a lover. He has a sonar for finding everyone with special needs. Aww. Yes. So one special needs parent to another. Yes, they are adorable. They are the biggest hearts in the world, but they can be stinkers, and sometimes you just want to beat them. Of course, we wouldn't. But you do, you're just like, oh, you're driving me crazy. But, yeah, it's not easy being a parent to a special needs child. But at the same time, it's one of the best blessings you could ever get in your life. Are you in Colorado? Nope, I am in Idaho. Thanks so much for sharing. Now she sees Dr. Adams. Oh, I have never heard of Dr. Adams. Hello, our son's sensory issues lead us to such aggression. Sensory issues are hard. I think that's one of our biggest issues with Matthew now, is just sensory issues, and then processing, like trying to understand, you know, like if he does something, and then understanding like the effect to it, and that things have consequences. And honestly, it'd be easier as a parent to just be like, oh, well, he doesn't quite understand it, so he doesn't need consequences. And that happens with a lot of the kids in his special needs room at school. And even though it's hard for him to comprehend the consequences, I believe that he still can grasp it. It takes him longer than normal, and he has to learn to live in society and learn to deal with other people. And so as much as it's hard to discipline him, he still gets grounded. He still gets, you know, things taken away. He very much gets disciplined because we love him. Yes, the good changes was great for her because she is off her meds. We still see for a heart check. Yeah. We actually see Dr. Womack. Let me see. We're up for his year. When is it? Let me see. And we see Dr. Bowell on the 28th. And we see Womack on the 1st, so he'll go in for his yearly. And that's what's amazing, is we went from seeing a cardiologist twice a week to now we only see him once a year. Which, I'll be honest, as a heart mom, it's terrifying to me to like know that he's not getting checked on every all the time, and knowing that I just have to kind of like listen to my own intuition to make sure he's okay. Have you been to Florida? I've been there for like a day before I went on a cruise, but we haven't lived there or anything like that, or had procedures done there. My parents took her in under her wing. Her parents had passed away from a car crash. Her little brother and sister lives with my parents, and it has happened for 7 years. Wow, what an amazing family you have. That's awesome. That's happy. I mean, not happy that they passed, but happy that they found someone to love them and care for them. Is Dr. Babel in Caldwell? I think that's how you spell it. Babel, Babbel, I think it is. And yes, he's in Caldwell. And he's the one, actually, his daughter passed away of hypoplastic left heart syndrome. That's, hi. You have some really fun craft ideas. Thank you. Have you tried applied behavior analysis? We are considering it. We also just chop up behaviors to the diagnosis. I actually have never heard of that. We did just do some genetic testing, just to kind of see if there was like something that we could kind of not label him as. That's so not what we were looking for, but he has so many weird little quirks that aren't typical for heart kids. The good news is, and the bad news is they didn't really find anything. He's just his quirky little self. And so we just have to kind of parent the way that we know best, and we're getting better. Some days are still really hard, but we just have to parent what works best for him. I don't have special needs kid, but I worked with special needs preschool last year. These kids are so smart, and it's amazing how much they've learned and grew just in one school year. I was with them. Yep, special needs kids are tough, but they're also melt your heart, that's for sure. I should see him when I was little. He's only, I used to see him when I was little. Oh, yeah, you probably could have. Because he's been here for like 16 years. I was going to say, oh, you're probably not old enough, but man, I'm getting old, because yeah, he's been here for 16 years. So if you're young enough. My little cousin is a miracle baby. She was not supposed to live, but she's now 2 years old and is the happiest baby I've ever met. Yep, those little miracle babies are pretty awesome. All right, guys. Well, it is almost midnight. My kids don't have school tomorrow, which means there's a possibility that I might be able to get sleep in, but let's be honest. My kids do not allow me to sleep in, so I probably should get to bed so I can wake up and find you guys some more awesome deals, because that is what most of you guys are on my page for. But I also appreciate you guys letting me share the more personal side. When we started this blog, I used to share a lot more. But I kind of got hard being judged a lot. So I admit, I totally pulled back. I kind of hid for a while. People are mean. I act like things don't bother me, and you guys see me be all weird and goofy. And for the most part, I'm weird and goofy, and it really doesn't bother me. But another thing, too, is I'm dyslexic, so I know a lot of times when I write these posts, sharing things about myself, they're not grammatically correct. They're not the most beautiful thing you've ever written, but they're my heart, and they're what's in my mind, and I want to share them, and it's hard for me because it's something that I know I'm not good at. But I also feel like I'm prompted to normally write those things for somebody. And the grammar police always come out when I share posts that are not just to keep on deal and tell me I did it wrong. So, but thanks for letting me share a little bit more. My little cousin, she had multiple heart and brain surgeries already. Handles it like a champ. That's awesome. I'm 25 years old. I've been living in Idaho since I was 16. Yeah, so he probably was your pediatrician. He's awesome. He is a family friend of ours, and he's amazing. Happy Thanksgiving, amazing lady. Thank you. Thanks for all you do. God bless you and your family. The ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, they say it will look for what happens before, during, and after behaviors. And they say they give them tools to help. That would be interesting. That would be interesting just because Matthew, like I said, he processes stuff like way different, and some things that you would think like some things he just like cracks up at and you're like, Matthew, this is not a time to be cracking up, like. And then other times he just starts bawling, and then other times, like I said, he could be like in a parking lot and get scared and just crunches into a ball, and you're like, buddy, no, you have to move to the side, like you're gonna get hit by a car. So he definitely handles things different than most people would. Thank you. Appreciate you sharing. Well, I think you are great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. You always wonder about your son. Thanks for sharing your lovely heart. You're welcome. I love watching you all the time. I don't want to seem like I'm a stalker, but I'm always waiting for you to come on. Hannah, we love it. Please be my stalker. So if you guys, some of you guys don't realize this, but blogging is actually how we make a living as a family. And so without you guys stalking us, without our readers, without people watching our videos and commenting on our posts and clicking to our page, we couldn't do what we do for a living. I mean, it's kind of a weird way to make a living, and if someone would have ever told me that I would be making a living doing this, I would have laughed at you. We're not rich by all means, but we do just fine, and the fact that we get to make a living by staying home with our kids, we work crazy hours, don't get me wrong. It's one of the best blessings that ever happened to us, especially knowing that every day is such a gift with our son, and then being able to be here all the time for him when he gets off the bus, because he doesn't handle transitions and stuff very well. Anyway, huge blessing. And so you guys as our readers and our stalkers, we love you. We thank you. And you guys are a blessing to us. Enjoy hearing some of your story. I do not have a special needs child, but it was good to hear you speak about this so we can all learn and be sensitive, non-judgmental. Thank you, Jamie. It doesn't bother most of us, and we love your page. I've been following you since you were pregnant with your 4th kiddo. Wow, so 6 years. Awesome. Thank you. You're my favorite blogger to watch because you're real and honest. I don't need to see perfect. I need to see a real honest mom that helps me not feel so crazy. And the fact that I'm a little weird and quirky makes you feel better about yourself, right? Yeah. So like I said, most of the time you guys see the goofy side of me, and that is the side that I enjoy most about myself normally. Sometimes talking about these type of topics, I honestly feel the most vulnerable and the most kind of like, what are people gonna think? But I appreciate you guys letting me show other sides. Is your husband a nurse, or am I confused? He is. So when I met my husband, he was a car salesman. We actually both worked at the same dealership. I worked in the office, and he was a car salesman. And then right after Matthew was born, a couple months before he was born, he switched to the service department at the dealership. And then he started going to classes at night to become a CNA. And then he ended up getting laid off from the dealership, which was like heartbreaking because that was our insurance, and I was terrified. And so he actually transitioned right from working at the dealership to becoming a CNA. And then he, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So then he started going to nursing school, and which he'd always wanted to become. He actually at one point wanted to become a doctor, and then he realized he hates school, and he knew he couldn't do that. It was too much school. So then he became a nurse, and he was a nurse for... Matt, how long were you a nurse?
14 years.
For 14 years. And then last June, because of changes to the healthcare system, he would have had to go back to school anyway. And so we made, or should I say he made the decision. It was funny because some people thought that he like quit because we were like rolling in the dough or something. Yeah, I wish. No, he made the decision that he wasn't going to go back to school. Because he would have had to go back to school full-time for 2 years. And so he made the decision to quit being a nurse at our local hospital. Now he can go work, because he's only an LPN, he's not an RN. So he could work at a care center or a nursing home or a doctor's office or something like that. He just couldn't work on the pediatric floor like he had been working on. So he quit last June, which made me kind of sad, I'll be honest. It was a little scary knowing that the blog would become our main source and only source of income. But we've made it, and, we still have lots of updates in our house that need fixed. We drive older cars, and, it's good. We're good, But I get him home, and he helps me with the blog. He does a lot of stuff that you guys don't realize. A lot of the things that you guys think are me are actually him. Can't convince him to go on camera very much. Most of the time you just see him going to the fridge to get something to eat back there, where he does, updates and stuff like that. But yeah, so we both work full-time on the blog, and then we have 2 girls that help us. And so technically he's still a nurse. He's keeping his license up. But the fact that we can work basically anywhere, as scary as it was for my husband to quit, knowing, and just like I said, seeing Jack, the boy who's going to have a heart transplant in a couple months, and seeing that they had to uproot their family and move, it's really comforting knowing that I can kind of be wherever my kids need me to be. And if we need to move because he needs a transplant someday, we're going to be able to do that and still hopefully provide for our family. I keep cracking up that you're saying quirky, since Quirk is my last name. Quirky, quirky, quirky mama, I'm quirky. Yeah, I say quirky and creepy and weird a lot. I call my kids creepy all the time, and some people are so confused by that. But it's an enduring term. My mom used to call me creepy all the time. You're so creepy. Yes, I am, just like you. So I call my kids creepy all the time. So quirky and creepy. What office does he work at? I think you're talking about Dr. Babel. Or my husband. My husband actually just worked at West Valley Medical Center right here in Caldwell. He worked in the pediatric floor and the med-surg floor. That's awesome. Did he work at St. Luke's? No. West Valley Medical Center. You guys are a good couple. Thank you. Wow, that's cool that he helps out, though. Yep, so he's actually the one that started the blog from day one. I mean, I had told him back when we very first started that I thought... Yeah, he's like, I came up with a name. He's right. So I told him that I wanted to find a place that I could, help people find good deals. And then I was like, there's, this thing called, a blog. And I'll be honest, I had to call my cousin Angela to find out what a blog was, because I didn't know what a blog was. I kind of thought I knew, but I didn't know. To me, a blog sounded like something that you hacked up when you're sick, like, blog, blog, to me, that's what blog sounded like. So I was like, Angela, what's a blog? And she's like, well, it's like a place online, kind of like MySpace, that you can write things on your wall. And I was like, okay, that'd be cool. So I told my husband that I had this idea, and so I actually wanted it to be Thrifty Idaho Mom. And my husband's like, no, you can't have it say Thrifty. Actually, I wanted it Coupon Idaho Mom or something like that. And my husband's like, no, you can't have Idaho in your name, because then that's going to limit you. And if people see that and they say Idaho, they're going to think that it's only for Idaho. And so I was really grumpy at him. I was like, you're mean. I want it to be called what I want. And then, anyway. And so he's like, no, he's like, you need to have a name that when people come across it, people can, feel like it's maybe something for them. And I was like, I'm writing this for my friends and family. I'm dyslexic. No one other than my friends and family is ever going to read it. And he's like, well, someday somebody else might want to read it. And I was like, I can promise you no one else other than my friends and family are ever going to read my blog. This is me saying, my name is Sarah Barron, and I was wrong, and my husband was right. Little did we know, here we are 9 years later, and it's, how we support our family. So part of me even wishes sometimes my name wasn't a Thrifty Mom. I wish it was something else, because Thrifty Mom kind of limits me. But, hey, so my husband was right. I was wrong, and we became a Thrifty Mom. Wow, that's cool that she helped out, though. I might have seen him before. You probably did. Robert says, you're hilarious. I'm 49 and 4 years old and I work full time. I would love to be home. I feel so guilty when I leave. It's awful. I wish I could do this. I'm a wimp though. Yeah. I mean, it's, a lot of times people will be like, oh wow, blogging. Like, I wish, I want to be able to post some deals online. Like, well, they don't realize that like honestly, the first, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years of our blog, Matt would work full time and then come home and work another couple hours on the site. And I was putting in 10 to 12 hour days. And it was a pretty big sacrifice on our family. It was hard. But it's finally to the point now where it's become a huge blessing. And blogging is not easy. It's full time, full time, but it's awesome. So, thanks for sharing your story. Never knew that you were dyslexic. Can't wait to show my daughter, who is also dyslexic. Loves showing her successful women who've overcome that hurdle. Oh, thank you. So that's another thing I need to talk about someday in the future. I'm totally dyslexic. It comes out in my speech a lot. It comes out, the typing isn't quite as bad, which is weird. But when I go to write with my, anything handwritten, I quite often start the word that I need to write in the middle. Like, so if I'm going to write the word apple, for some reason I write down P before I write down the A, even though I know in my brain it starts with an A, like there's a lost connection there. And so, yeah, it's a little tough. I spent most of my life feeling like I was stupid. I didn't realize that it was just because I was dyslexic. That's another thing I need to share with people someday, because it would have been nice as a little girl to see that I'm not stupid. I learn different than other people, and you just learn to deal with it. And so here's the thing. The other day, I was actually at my friend's house, and I was helping her, and I was surrounded by very successful people. I was around a lawyer. I was around a NICU nurse, and I was around my friend who's really smart. And I was actually, her daughter came up, and she asked me to read some stuff, and there was a word, I actually don't even remember what it was, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what this word was. And so I said it, and then everybody's like, what? And I was like, I don't know. And so I was like, So I said it, and then they're like, oh, you mean this? I wish I could remember what the word was. And then so I just laughed it off. I was like, ha! I was like, yeah, I don't know what that word is. And I felt like this big. I felt so stupid. But, it's okay. Reading is not something that's easy for me. And reading you guys' comments, quite often I get things a little screwed up, and reading in front of people is, but I do it, and it's okay. So tell your daughter she's going to be just fine. What's wrong with your eyebrows? Is probably the lighting. There's nothing wrong with my eyebrows. My husband's laughing because over the years of blogging, my eyebrows get more comments than anything. So Tyler, I'm assuming you might mean this in a mean way, and if you do, that's fine. I can go ahead and block you. And if you mean it in an honest way, I want you to draw a line down your face and look at your face. And no one's face is symmetrical. Most people's nostrils are not symmetrical, your lips aren't symmetrical, your eyes aren't symmetrical, and my eyebrows are not symmetrical. So this eyebrow happens to be quite, and so the light's shining on them, so it looks, so this eyebrow tends, and then I tend to raise this eye. There's nothing wrong with my eyebrows. It's the way God made them. And if you want, I do have a scar because my brother bashed my head on the door, but, there's nothing wrong with my eyebrows. And if you don't like them, you can leave. But I'm hoping you're just joking. If you're not joking, adios. Tyler, oh my goodness, that's funny. Tyler, go sleep. Hush, Tyler, she's who she is, and that's great. I'm just wondering, because a lot of girls pluck them out, which is dumb. Wondering if she... Oh! Okay. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to block you because we don't allow... don't allow naughty words on our page. I don't allow naughty words in my home. and I won't allow them on my page. So we're going to go ahead and block him. Bye. He's gone. Block him, Sarah. I just did. We live up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Actually, I've been following you before my daughter was born, so about 8 years. That's very common for people with dyslexia. Talking about your comment about how your husband started it and told you someone else would read it. My son has the exact same diagnosis, which is dyslexia and dysgraphia. Is it still? It's the lighting, right? You know, that's okay. We blocked Tyler. It's okay. Like I said, so once upon a time in my life, that would have really bothered me. Because ding-dongs get on here, and they like to sit behind their computer, and they like to make other people feel inadequate about themselves. And mine happens to be my eyebrows. People seem to not like them. And yeah, when the light's shining, yeah, it looks like I plucked them all out. But then all of a sudden I go down like this and people tell me I have 2 bushy eyebrows. So I can't make the internet happy for some reason. They either tell me I have too many eyebrows, they say I don't have enough, or they tell me they're not even because they think I plucked them all out. So that's all right. You seem to be doing well, and I love your eyebrows. Mine are warped. And no, don't pluck them either. People obsess with eyebrows. It's not that they're located weird, they just look like you plucked them weird.
Makes it look like one side is way higher than the other, though, sir.
Yeah, the video. Well, it's probably, hey, if I turn my head like this, does it look better? It doesn't matter. Tyler, I blocked you.
Like the angle of the camera or something, you have to twist it.
Oh, okay. My husband's like saying it's just the angle of the camera. I don't get it. Why do people talk about eyebrows? I like them. They're beautiful just the way they are. Tyler's the best. Tyler, thanks for the answer. I wasn't being mean. No way. Well, you still got blocked because you said a naughty word. And we don't allow naughty words on our page. I don't allow naughty words in my house. And my blog is just an extension of my house. So we blocked you. You're beautiful. That's all that matters. Eyebrows. I don't think that was such an issue. Right. I know. And then here's another thing. If you guys have been reading my blog for a while, you know, I also have a dimple. Do you see it? I have a dimple on the tip of my nose. And people always get really concerned and always tell me that my nose is dirty. Or they're like, you have a smear on your nose. Or, yeah. So, inherited that from my grandma. Didn't have it when I was younger, but I guess now that I'm getting older. But yeah, so I now have so most people comment on my eyebrows and the dimple on my nose. Yay, lucky me. Good thing I'm already married and my husband snagged me up when I was still cute because now I'm all weird and dimply and have funky eyebrows, right? Oh my goodness, a dimple. How could you? All right, guys. Well, it's not very often that I block people, but yeah, just FYI, if you do swear on my page, link to naughty things or say naughty things, I just block ya. I never did notice that until you showed me. I know. Now that you see it, you're going to be like, ah, I can't unsee it. Now it's the only thing you're going to see when I do videos. You're going to be like, oh my goodness, look at her dimple. Do you see it? Do you see the dimple on the tip of my nose? One of these days I'm going to be showing people the dimple and I'm going to have like a big old booger up there and I'm going to be like, oh, well that's a little embarrassing. Hi from Denmark. I think you're awesome. Night, night. Oh, Angie says good morning. I am getting people from other countries. This is fun. Night, I love you. No swears here. Awesome. All right. All right. Well, we started out talking about special needs and then we ended talking about people that make fun of my eyebrows. So anyway. All right, guys, I will chat with you later. Thanks again. And as always, have a good night, and thanks for watching.